Okay, welcome back to AP World History Modern. In this topic, we're going to focus on studying the webs of history as part of our developing our mindset for doing history, something we'll do throughout the year. So, in this video, we're going to talk very briefly about arguments in history, as well as begin to kind of link it to what we read in the introduction of the human web. So by the end of this lesson, not only this video, but the assignment and also the second video, we need to be able to create an argument that explains how and why webs are central to the study of world history. So the first thing we need to do is we need to talk about how we study history using not only the global perspective, but also what are the parts of arguments. From your reading and our later discussion in the second video, we're going to be able to identify and describe what a human web is and how a human web works. And ultimately, by doing this assignment, you're going to be able to create a thesis statement, a set of claims, and supporting evidence to answer that essential question, creating an argument that explains how and why webs are central to world history. So we begin with a little bit of review. What is history? In the past, we have defined history as the process of inquiry about how humans have survived and prospered in different chronological and geographical contexts through the development of processes. And that we do history by, first of all, focusing on the inquiry. We have a question. We evaluate evidence. We make connections. And finally, we construct arguments. So, specifically today, we're going to focus on the constructing of arguments using the information from the introduction in chapter 1 of the human web. So, the first thing we need to make sure that we understand when we begin to construct arguments, any argument in world history is focused on what is known as the global perspective. The global perspective essentially is where we look at the big picture, the globe, and we see the common processes that are used across the globe. And when we zoom in and study different states or different regions, for example, China, Sub Saharan Africa, or the United States, we're seeing, first of all, how their specific processes are part of the overall global processes. And then throughout time, we begin to make connections through comparisons and changes between different people in different chronological and geographical contexts. So, just to sum it up, when we begin to argue in world history, we're focusing on from a big picture global point of view. The one thing that historians have to do when they begin to study history is not only to read the arguments of others, but also understand them. When we read them, when we understand them, we're looking to identify the thesis, identify the claims, identify the evidence that the author uses to support what they're arguing, but also we think of evidence that not only can support that, but also refute it. So, for example, if we're talking about homework, so my thesis that I gave you in class is that AP classrooms should have a lot of homework. And my claims would be something to the effect that homework helps us learn history on our own so we can work on certain skills in class. And it develops the ability to read and learn on your own that you'll need in college. So you notice there I have claims and I have evidence kind of mixed in there. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, yes, when I go to the University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, whatever college you want to go to, I'm going to need to be able to learn on my own. and that evidence would support my thesis. But you're also thinking to yourself, wait a minute. I've got 6 other classes that I have to do homework for. I've got a social life, maybe a job, maybe, another love. Maybe you're an actress or an actor or play a sport or something like that, that you're also going to need time for. Well, you've just went through the process that you're going to go through as a historian. So, just to kind of sum it up, whenever a historian makes an argument, first of all, they establish the context. Where does it fit into history? They have a thesis, a 1 to 2 sentence answer to the question or the prompt that they're focusing on. They have subclaims or mini theses that help prove the overall thesis, and they have specific evidence that helps support what they're arguing. So whenever we go back and we go through analyzing the arguments of others, this is what we're looking for. Whenever you begin to make your own arguments, these are the things that you will include. So if we were to diagram some sort of argument, you see in this, a student develops a historical argument to support a thesis. He or she uses the following graphic organizer to structure their argument. So this would turn into kind of like an essay. So we begin with the thesis, and then we have 2 subclaims that support the thesis. Now, in this example, when they say sources, that would be the specific historical evidence that could be used to be able to support the claim and eventually support the thesis. This is another example. So this is kind of like a mind map of time management. And though it's not historical, it helps us kind of see the structure of a historical argument. So we see in the center kind of the main idea, time management. And in a history argument, it would be written as a thesis, but here it's just basically shown as a time. So you see the subclaims. What are the parts of time management? Effectiveness, mind tools, delegation, work-life balance, and so forth and so on. You can read. So those would be my subclaims. Now, your historical argument probably will not have this many subclaims. But again, I'm using this to kind of show you a structure of how an argument works. Finally, we have evidence. So if you'll find effectiveness right above where it says time management, you see that the evidence of effectiveness is to develop action plans based on priorities and goals, and an evaluation using diaries and meetings that will help you become better at time management. So, just to kind of go back to the very beginning, the argument that you're going to diagram using one of the 2 forms is essentially you're going to create an argument that explains how and why webs were central to the study of world history. And what you're doing is you're using the information from The Human Web by the McNeils to kind of frame this argument. So now your next step is to go and do the assignment, the diagram.